We are live on Facebook or getting ready to be live. Boop, 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 boop. Yes. Yes. Come on in, everybody. Yeah.
Bro, shut up.
We are live. We live. We're live, Reverend Alan Mitchell Sr.
I'm sorry.
We're live, sir. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Okay.
Hi,
Well, come on in, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Certainly, we're grateful for you with us today and just having another wonderful conversation with some genius gentlemen. And certainly, we're thankful for you all coming along and being a part of this conversation tonight. Certainly, when you can, do me a favor and share this with everybody. Share with everybody. Let everybody know we are on and we are live. But God bless you. Thank you so much for joining. We'll begin in the next few minutes. We'll get going here. So thank you so much.
Do me a favor and share this.
Mhm.
Brother Edmund,
How's it going, y'all?
good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Yes, sir.
Did we
Always.
lose one?
How's the family? How's everybody? That's what I was trying to get in contact. I'm gonna call real quick.
All right.
Okay.
Oh man, what a day, man. What a day. What a day of rejoicing. I'm over here in San Francisco and Lord has been kind to us. And here you can see me. I'm on the mountains, everybody. Alan is in he's in intelligentsia. That's a that's a dimension. But come on in, everybody. We're having a good time before we get started. And certainly thank God for you. What's up, brother Isaiah? What's going on, man? Love you. Good to see you. Those of you that come on, say hello so I can say hello back to you. Come on in. God bless you. God bless you. Good evening, Shanina. Good evening. Dr. McElroy. God bless you. God bless you. Come on in, everyone. Certainly grateful for your presence in the room tonight. Just going to have a really good conversation tonight, really surrounding our young Black kings, and we're grateful for Brother Edmund and Reverend Minister Edmund and Reverend Alan Mitchell. And good evening, Amanda. Yes, I'm in San Francisco, and I'm enjoying myself from the mountains of San Francisco. But thank God for all of you that are joining. Do us a favor and share this. Hit the share button where you are. Hit the share button, and we certainly will be grateful. We're trying to get the word out, but as we're coming along, I just want to highlight something that we just can't ignore. We can't really ignore what took place last night and what that meant and what that means for the current and future of our justice system. And kind of want to get some reactions in particular. As we know, Derek Michael Chauvin was convicted and was guilty on all three charges. For me personally, it was I was happy. I will say I was happy. I was happy, but I was not satisfied, of course, but I was happy. Why? Because as much as we have gone through in terms of heartbreak, as everyone sees something black and white in our community, like this is a no-brainer. Many no-brainers, Alan, have not come to they've not turned in our favor, right? And as a result of it, we've been disappointed. And so I have to just pause and take a moment of relief. One, because I also recognize the family of Brother Floyd was also relieved, and they too were happy with the verdict. And I'm happy with the verdict. I'm happy with it. I can't knock it and say, well, this ain't enough. Well, it's a start. And 1,000 miles journey will begin with one step. And one of the things about that one step was exactly what took place yesterday. Now, let me be clear. I don't want to throw around the word that it was justice. I would say, if we want to say it in an individual sense, it was justice. But overall sense, justice for me is where this does not even come up again. Number one, justice for me also speaks of, we as a people don't sit on pins and needles waiting for something like this to take place, like a verdict like this coming down, right? Because the fact that we're all on pins and needles with something as a no-brainer is this. Everybody saw the video. Everybody can, like, the prosecution's theme was, you can believe your eyes. But in many cases, we couldn't really believe our eyes, right? And so good evening, Sister Karen. Good evening. Good evening, y'all. Just wanting to just kind of just piggyback on some things. But give me your insight, bro. What do you think? What are your thoughts about what took place and what happened with this case?
This is definitely, like you said, not the totality of justice for the hundreds of years and current conditions our people are in, but it is a great taste of justice. Something that I believe we needed, especially in our current context and how the narrative has been going for so long. But we are living in a day and age where we are shedding light on these issues, and it's coming to light. But now, where do we go from here? That's my question. I have, being this who I am, sometimes I can be a little blunt, but I have this idea where I like to look ahead after everyone is still talking about what's already been done. How do we protect ourselves in the future? I'm seeing that in the process of getting to Derek Chauvin's his verdict was, there was marching, there was marching toward and calls being made to the necessary offices concerning, the law. There were people putting pressure on the police department, and all of these play a part in an important role in what we're doing for justice, not just for George Floyd, but we have to also remember that Sandra Bland and Breonna Taylor are still, waiting to be heard, as well as Trayvon Martin. And I hear people say that George Zimmerman should have been made an example of. We wouldn't have this issue, and it may have, if you interpret it as violent or if you interpreted it as seeking justice through the law. Either way, that's a true statement that we should be so girded with readiness that when this does occur again, because we have to be truthfully speaking, when this does occur again, because a 16-year-old was just killed, how are we strapped? How are we equipped and ready to approach and address these issues so that people won't walk away, such as George Zimmerman living his best life and, signing autographs and all kind of stuff you see that he's been doing. So my focus is on being ready, both, mentally, spiritually, and physically.
Can you clear up something for us, bro? Just so that we're very clear, because I always want to make sure that there's an understanding of positions so that people are clear. You're not talking about go get strapped and go start a war.
Oh no,
right?
I like hip hop.
But let's be clear, because I want people to be very aware of, kind of how to approach this whole situation
Now,
forward.
Yeah. When I say strapped, I mean strapped in knowledge, strapped and ready in, reading the amendments and reading your constitution and reading the laws in the state or township or wherever you live so that you know how to handle, unfortunate events when you're being tried by police officers who just having a bad day or those who are racist and you catch yourself between police officers and a community with phones in your face. We live in a fortunate time where anything can happen to you. So I say strapped, I mean strapped in knowledge and being aware and ready to protect yourself and utilize the papers and the laws that was written, for uh, those who live in this country to be free and created equal and have inalienable rights, for us to seek that and understand that. Because right now, I believe a lot of us are ignorant and, are scared. Like looking at Devontae, who ran from the police officer and they try to justify that killing. But this is hysteria, a reaction of hysteria and fear. And I can see that young man being in fear of his life and why he reacted in such a way. And so if we were equipped, I'll say that word, equipped with the law and with the paper knowledge, I believe that we can be prepared for the future. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, we can go into that conversation later if you talk about gun laws and protecting your family, all that kind of stuff. But that's another conversation. But I'm talking more on the more peaceful side because we know where this has driven a lot of people and their emotions, frustration and anger. And we can expound on that. And, Malcolm X even proposed certain things in that gray area. But I think that the smartest thing for us to do, considering where we are, our economic stance, our unreadiness, we should never ever go to a fight that we're not prepared for. It's physically. So the smartest thing is to do it politically and through the law and through under just reading the Constitution amendments and the papers and the understanding of this land.
Well, I'm gonna say this. I think that it is very it is a reminder, one, of how far we have to go, but it is to say that it's feel good. It is okay to be happy at this time and to really rejoice because we've come so far, So, but it's still a constant reminder of, wow, what can we do next time this happens? Is this going to happen again? Yes. And our reaction should not be numb to it. We should want the same type of, and I'm not saying we should want the same type. We should have the same type of energy for when the next person does it. We should have the same type of energy towards our people when our people are hurting. So I think that it felt good, and it is okay that it felt good. So, but right now I'm like thinking about, man, a few minutes later you may go to your phone and see somebody else, and another victim of police violence. So that's how I feel about it.
And unfortunately we did hear about that. But Brother Brandon, thank you, man, for flexibility tonight. I know you're in a different time zone than us, man. So I really appreciate you. And good evening to Sister Teria. Good evening to Sister Evangelist Brittany Mason. Thank you so much, y'all, for joining tonight and commenting. Feel free, again, to express yourself tonight. I'm going to do the best I can to moderate and to have conversation tonight with us and help you all to engage in our conversation. But Brother Brandon, man, what did you think, man? What did you think about kind of what you saw and what you felt about the whole Chauvin case and what did you think?
Yeah, appreciate y'all having me back. Glad been enjoying these conversations. So for me, it was a mix of emotions, and it was a very unique situation. I think I mentioned last time I work in the school, so we were having conversations before the announcement came out, preparing for just ways. I work in a school system that's 87% black and brown. But our staffing doesn't resemble that currently. But I work in a district that has realized that and is working towards that and trying to make things equitable and want to make change. So I commended our principal, our superintendent. We were having some meetings leading up to it on how we wanted to address it. So first I was from that mindset of how do we create a space where, if it would have went wrong, was it okay if kids walked out of class? What if kids didn't want to come back to school the next day? What if kids wanted to protest? So my first mindset was from there at first, but the whole day was nerve-wracking because we knew there was a possibility that it could go wrong. So now we know it went right, but so that's where I first was that anxious, refreshing the news, refreshing Twitter, trying to see when the verdict was going to go out. But for me, I actually was more so saddened, to be honest, after it happened, after they announced he was guilty. Our response, like, I was relieved, I will say that, like, okay, they got it right. But I was also saddened because, kind of like Dove said, like, it felt good that it was right and that, change is happening. They can't do it like they used to over history, where they could just blatantly just say, not guilty, you go your way, keep your pension, go back to work, and that type of stuff. So that felt good. But the part that saddened me was that we are at a place as a people that we're so lowly thought of, or we're such in a low state as a people altogether, that success to us was an officer going to prison. You know what I mean? That meant success to us. That meant progress. That meant, and it is progress. So I'm not speaking against that, but it made me sad that we're at a place where that's the sign of progress for us. That seeing a police officer go to prison, and that's the only way we see progress for our people. Currently, one of the only ways, I should say, brought me just some sadness of, again, how far we have to go. Because yes, it did show progress, and yes, it showed change, but it made me sad because it was like, man, we got a long way to go if what is viewed as progress is simply a police officer going to prison, not community change, not equal education, not taking food deserts away from our community, not being number one in almost every health statistic. A lot of that stuff is like, it's none of that real equitable change that happened. It was a police officer going to prison, which was well deserved. So I'm not speaking down on that by any means, but just speaking to the fact that it's sad to me that that's our celebration, because we really celebrated as a people, but that's where we are.
I, I feel you, man, and you're right. Right, there's so many other complexities and challenges that our community is facing, and without a doubt, yeah, I think we had to take that win, though. You know what I mean? It's like, it was like, a win is a
That's definitely a
win.
fact.
It was ugly, but a win is a win. And for us, it was a moment of celebration, but not really. I don't want to say celebration, but for me, I didn't really celebrate. For me, it was a moment of relief that, you know, finally, right, we were able to progress, at least with this step, you know, and justice issues are an issue in our community, right? But then we do have food deserts, right? Particularly in the zip code of the church that I serve as pastor, there are that's one of the highest diabetes rates in the county of Cook. It's crazy. As it relates to gentrification, right? Those different challenges where people of color have raised their grandchildren, their children, their grandchildren, generations that have been on the west side of Chicago are actually being taxed out of that, right? So yeah, you're right, man. And I see what you're saying. I just look at it from the standpoint of, I'm grateful that there was accountability. Accountability is huge, because I think accountability does send a message. Like, it was like the look on his face was, oh, if I'm really going to jail for real. I'm guilty. You know what I mean? Part of me said two things. Part of me said, wow, he's going to jail. But another part of me says that there could be a fix in that we don't know about. But you know what? I'm grateful for the win that we got. Listen, I also invited a good brother of mine who is a assistant principal.
That's right.
In the South Suburban school system, and Abraham Mobley
Yes, sir.
is the man.
There
Now
you go.
he has a lot of insight as it relates to young Black kings, and he's going to give some weigh in on some of the topics that Minister Edmund Williams is going to be highlighting. But I want to first get your take, bro. Abraham, Abe, I want you to tell me about your thought process on the Chauvin trial, what it meant for our people, what it meant for the police. I mean, what it meant for the relationship, what it meant for progress or not. Be free, man. What are you thinking?
I think that initially when they decided to levy charges against the officer, I believe they charged him correctly. And I think that was the start of what I felt was a good process. They didn't go overboard with the charges. They didn't charge him emotionally. I think they charged him correctly. And with what he was on trial for and what they had the jury examine, what they had the jury deliberate, I think they had all that correct. And I was not surprised at the verdict. It met my expectations of what I expected to happen. And I think that there's a lot of momentum right now. You mentioned something about relationships. There's a lot of momentum right now with relationships between various members of the community right now. And in the school system, we've been really pushing relationships when it comes to social and emotional learning. So I think that the relationships that we've built with the community led to a positive outcome in this trial.
Speak a little bit more on that, bro. When you say for social emotional learning, with relationships, speak a little bit more on that.
Well, with my experience with the populations that I've been working with here in the South suburbs, we've become aware that a lot of our students come to us with a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things that have happened to the Coke can before you open it. By the time you get to open the Coke can, it explodes. So what we've been trying to do is get in front of that explosion. And number one, we want to make sure that students' needs are met before we try to teach them. Because if their needs aren't being met from an emotional level, they're not going to learn anything. Because that's going to occupy their mental capacity. Is how am I going to eat? How am I going to stay warm tonight? How am I going to make sure my little brothers and sisters get their homework done? How am I going to make sure that my mom is going to be in a position where when she leaves tonight, she can have dinner prepared for, whatever the need is outside of school. One thing we've tried to do is become aware of those needs and address them so that emotional blockage isn't there and learning can take place. And then when we speak about relationships, one thing that I always stress to my teachers is that if the students don't like you, they're not going to learn from you. Okay, the students have got to like you in order for them to learn from you. And the number one way to get a student to like you is to show that you care. And students who come from traumatic backgrounds can't fake that. You have to genuinely show an interest in their personal lives. You have to genuinely show them that you care about them. And you really have to build that strong relationship with them so that you two can work in partnership to get their educational goals met. So I think
So
go ahead.
So you mean to tell me this whole adage that we grew up on, you ain't gotta like me, but you better respect me. You mean to tell me that now there's a shift in the way we educate and how we relate to our children? Because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
I think that's eye-opening, right?
This generation, we call them whiffles. What's in it for me?
Whiffums.
Whiffums. What's in it for me? What do I get by passing your standardized test? What's in it for me? How does that benefit me? What do I get from doing your homework? How does that benefit me? What do I get for this? Okay, and that's a fair question. What do I get? Because you can't just tell a kid, this is probably gonna ruffle some feathers. You can't just tell a kid, well, you get a good education. What does that mean? How does that help me? How does that help me eat? How does that help me keep the lights on in my home? You know what I'm saying? That what's in it for me? Why should I do this? Okay. So you gotta build in some sort of incentives for the students and have them work towards something while they're working.
Work for something while they're working.
Work towards something.
And so everybody wins in that scenario. Am I right?
Yeah. Can
you talk about the successes that you've had from that? And I know we got some topic to talk about, Edmund, but I just wanted to. Abe is literally on the front line.
Yeah. Oh man, I've had a lot of successes. You know, I get a student who, let's say, one of my first students, my first year teaching, I had a student. I won't use his name, but he came to me a little later on in the school year, and when I researched his background, I noticed that he's been in like 7 or 8 schools in 3 years. So he probably missed about 70 days of school over the past 3 years. Now, each day of missed education, each day of missed school is really 3 days of missed learning because of the way school is set up. Okay. So if you miss day 1, when you come back day 2, the students are working on what we did for day 1. So now you're sitting there on day 2, lost. When we move on to day 3, you're still trying to grasp what you missed from day 1. So now somebody's got to work with you on day 1 and 2. So by the time you get to day 4, you caught up with the rest of the class. This one student had missed about 70 days of school. That's about 370 days worth of learning that he had missed. And he had a lot of behavior issues. So I already knew coming in, you know, the research that I did, I already knew that I had to get this boy on my side because I really wanted him to learn. I really wanted him to grow. So I tested him. I was a 5th grade teacher. He was reading on the 2nd grade level. And the first day in my class, he got in trouble. Very first day of my class, he got in trouble. And I asked him what happened. I said, what happened? And he told me the story about what happened. And he was dead wrong, right? He was dead wrong with what he did to the other student. He was dead wrong. But you know what I did? I took his side. I said, you know what? I understand. Dude, you've been to 3 schools. You've been to 7 schools in the past 3 years. You come and go. You don't make any friends. And you think this place is just temporary. And what that student did to you, that was dead wrong. I understand why you knocked him upside his head. I'd have knocked him upside his head too. But what I want you to do next time is this. So I gave him some strategies to work on the next time he faced that same situation. He didn't care what those strategies were. He was caught up in the fact that I listened to him and I believed him and I understood why he came in my classroom wilding, because he's been a new kid over and over and over again. The student wound up staying with me. He finished out the year. I didn't really impact him academically that year, but he wound up staying with us for 6th grade. And, you know, to get him from 3rd grade to 6th grade in 1 year, it's probably not going to happen. But the relationship that I built with that student, you know, carried on over until his junior high school years. So that was one of my first successes using restorative justice and social emotional learning.
That's so profound, bro. I'm taking notes, right? And the reality is, you're saying, I believe, what you did say in saying I believed him and I was with him, you showed that you cared.
Right.
Excuse me. You're connected. Right. You connected to him.
Right.
In such a way that his almost his spirit perked up to say maybe there's something here that I can latch on to.
Absolutely.
Where I don't have to be so, people ain't got to look at me as a stranger, but they look at me as a friend. I got some allies in the fight.
You part of this family. And that's what I used to tell my students. I spend more time with you than I do with my own children. Okay, so from 8 to 4, I'm your educational dad. I'm your educational father from 8 to 4. So from 8 to 4,
I know it worked.
you.
Hey, look at some of the comments of some of the people that are watching. They said some of the stuff that we taught back in the day doesn't work now. We should be teaching children about credit, starting business, and leadership. Let's not forget about bringing God back into education.
Okay.
Somebody saying how to do taxes, balance a checkbook, rent an apartment. So many practical things that aren't taught. We need to start teaching them. What do y'all think about that? I know we just got Abe talking. Abe, give your 5 cents, and whoever else jump in.
You want me to go now?
Go ahead, bro.
Well, I think that teaching about credit and all that good stuff. I mean, we do that. We kind of do that, but again, it's got to have context. It's got to have meaning for the students in order for it to sink in and marinate. So I think, yeah, what's in it for me? Why do I need credit? I'm not worried about that right now. I'm worried about where my next meal is coming from. You know what I mean? So I think that that's important. But I don't think that that's something we need to teach, as directly as we do reading, math, and science. And then as far as prayer in school and bringing God back into school, with the restorative justice program, that's another buzzword that's going around in education that we use. We have a peace circle, and in this peace circle, it's kind of like our class family. It's like our class council. And I know other people want to talk, so I'll just give when you've got the talking piece, you basically have the floor. So if a student wants to organize a prayer, if they want to lead us in prayer, or they want to, give some sort of testimony, when you've got that talking piece, you're free to do that. So that's kind of indoctrinated into the curriculum already as well.
Anybody else? Thank you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was that dude.
I'll piggyback off the restorative justice is interesting too. We use it in our school district too, and that transition year is always interesting when you transition into the restorative justice, because it's a mind, kind of how Pastor mentioned earlier. It's a mind shift in some of the things you said, but also in the staff, and realizing how teaching has to be different, how discipline has to be different, changing from not suspending kids and different things like that. It took a little while, and our district grabs hold to it, and our suspensions are probably down near 80%. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
It's a little skewed this year because of COVID. Everybody's not in the building. We got 40% of our kids not in the building, so that takes away from some of it, if we're honest. But our suspensions are still down. But what I think is interesting about it, kind of like Abe said, it puts so much of the responsibility back on the student, that when we were in school, and I'm not that far removed from them, but in elementary, middle school, and different things like that, we had no voice when it came to when problems happened. There was no communication. Like if we did something wrong, you just went straight to the principal's office. You said nothing, and whatever discipline was handed down, they call your mom, they send you home. Whatever it was the result. You had to deal with it. It never was a conversation. So that's what I enjoy the most about them, is having those conversations that student then, kind of how Abe mentioned, has to then voice what they did wrong. So not, because sometimes a lot of the students don't even know that they did something wrong. They don't know. And I think it forces ownership. It forces accountability, and it's always a learning environment for them to see why, just because you think something is right, everybody doesn't have the same viewpoint as you. So it forces students to then look around when they sit in those circles and see someone from a different home or a similar home or anything, that people think different than them. And then it forces them to start looking at the world differently and like, dang, everybody doesn't think the same way that I think.
Right.
Because I think 100% what I did was right. It does not mean that I'm always right. And it forces them to think that. And sometimes they still leave thinking that they was right, but it still
Yeah.
forces them to have those conversations to think
Right.
and know that other people was thinking different. But I wanted to say something about the learning, the insurance piece and other things. I think school is changing and having to figure out more ways to engage kids, to keep them engaged. Because just coming into school and doing, the normal curriculum and normal different things, students just don't relate to that. So it's starting to have to be a lot more conversations. A lot of schools are going to the work programs in the school system. Students can come to school and then leave and go to work and different things like that. So I think it's, the one thing that I want to see the school system get to, and I'm hoping it will, is just more truth of what's going on in the world brought into a historical concept. That's the only thing that I'm waiting for it to change in the school system.
Yeah.
So bottom line, we cannot afford to give up on our Black kings.
No.
We can't afford to do it. And what you all have done is found out of the box, innovative ways to make a connection, right? Similar to me, my son has been invited on a travel baseball team, and the last 2-3 weeks, he's played about 4 or 5 games all over the basically Chicagoland area. And then there's one kid that's on the team, and the coach wants to kick him off. And I said, listen, no. I said, we can't afford to do that. There's got to be a way that we can connect. There's got to be a way. And I made it a point these past couple games to make sure I found another angle to make a connection with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Now this kid is much more attentive, just in the last 2 games, much more attentive, not distracting, pay attention to the baseball game. He's excitable, yet still he's much more attentive to the game. But how quickly are we to lose patience, right?
Yeah.
With our young Black kings to the point where we give up on them. And if we as Black men give up on them,
yeah,
what message does that send to those watching? Oh, y'all don't love them, so why we got to deal with them?
Oh, we gotta love them.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Y'all threw them away, so they're nothing to you. That, of course, they're nothing to me. Throw them, lock them up. Right? It's so important that and this goes for church. I believe this as a pastor, that every soul matters, and I believe every person matters, every woman matters, every kid matters, and we have to be intentional. And you're right. I've learned something that with them. Somebody write that down in the comments. With them, what's in it for me? That's the level of understanding, and we may look at that as being shallow. Why? Because we grew up in a different generation. It ain't always about you, but in this generation, we sometimes have to deprogram how we thought teaching ought to be or reaching ought to be, and understand in this new context, we have to, I don't know if the word is capitulate, but we have to meet them halfway.
I mean, where they at?
Right. And oftentimes we look at the text. I know this is a Bible study, but we look at text, we look at scripture, we see Jesus meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We see Jesus coming down not as a king, but as a carpenter. Right. We see Jesus coming down. He was a poor man. He was a Black boy. Think about it. The Bible talks about in Matthew, when Herod was after him to kill him, he went and fled to Egypt and hid in Egypt. You can't hide being a white boy in Egypt. Okay. So he was Black. He was a Black boy that came up, right? And ultimately, the Bible talks about him being touched with all of the emotions and the feelings of human existence, but without sin. So ultimately, we look at that Jesus coming and speaking to tax collectors. We look at Jesus coming and talking to people who were caught in adultery, people that had trauma in their lives, right? And not saying, hey, this is the way that it ought to be, and you got to come to me. But no, Jesus was like, no, I can relate and come to you. Feel what I'm saying? So I don't know if Reverend Allen had something to say, but long story short is I'm going to jump in and allow Edmund to kind of piggyback on, or not piggyback, but kind of launch us a little bit. I know we kind of spent a little bit of time, but just launch us a little bit on kind of what we were dealing with our kings, and kind of this boy just went on mute just now. If we
I'm
could
sorry.
jump in and kind of deal with kind of the conversation that you wanted to kind of deal with a little bit as it relates to our Black kings. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I know we can't fully go over everything tonight, but I wanted to at least throw this in the air. We've already talked about the subject. We talked about our Black kings and the different pieces that they're missing. I wanted to throw out there the missing pieces that are a lot of our children are having are when it's going into manhood. It's sort of a blurred line that they continue doing these various behaviors. So I was asking, and we already talked about it. Basically, the topic was what different pieces or missing pieces are kids and manhood. And
You frozen. He's frozen. I think he's trying to get at what are missing pieces that help to transition a boy to a man. What can be done, especially as it relates to, rites of passages, right? Those rites of passages were ways in which individuals, all of a sudden allowed them into a different realm or age or bracket of life, stage of life, right? Edmund, kind of piggyback on that. Say that one more time, because you went blank there.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing?
We're trying to figure out, you said what the missing pieces were.
Correct. We're trying to find out what exactly is the missing pieces when children and boys are going into manhood, teens going into manhood. What are the missing pieces that we can address as men that the kids are facing, and what can we do to support them? And so I was just saying that a great point to that, I think a lot of our teaching and a lot of our ways that we approach our children is not trauma first. So I think that if we know that they're dealing with trauma, we would understand how to approach them. And so I was just saying, that was just piggybacking on what the vice principal has said about that. So yeah, just come in and chime in, and just really, we want to talk about the different pieces. So we've already been talking about it. That's why I was saying, that's why I was quiet the whole time. But yeah, definitely. I'm gonna start with you, Brandon. I know you talked about. Oh, never mind. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, Father Abraham kind of, placed some things into context and brought some practicality to these experiences. That kind of came to my mind because, that's exactly what you are. You're a father, like you said, from 8 to whatever, 4 o'clock. And part of my experience that was missing, because I grew up in a single parent home. I had my mom, but I think what helped me in my transition was it was a village. There was a village mentality amongst my family. So I had my grandfather, I had my uncles, I had my big cousins, and they all taught me different aspects from their perspective of what a man should be. And then we, also contextualizing or, understanding the context that most Black boys live in. Like Brother Edmund said, addressing the traumas, because I had a lot of them growing up on the west side of Detroit. Some things I shouldn't have seen there around gangs. I was, at a little street gang. And, so when there was time to, for me searching for answers through experiences, because there wasn't anybody really holding my hand, there was a lot of naysaying and don't do that versus addressing the trauma and the result, because most Black kids are layered onions. It's very hard to get to the center of the issue, and you got to take your time, pill by pill, to get to them. you know, my children running around having a good time. Excuse everybody. But yeah, you know, just hearing Father Abraham talk about how he's, you know, doing his work, understanding his the young man he's counseling and being with and teaching, and listening to them first. You know, not accusing them or saying you shouldn't have, or now everybody's in trouble. You know that, you know, everybody getting a whooping, and instead of sitting down and saying, "Well, what happened? Let's talk about it and express your feelings." So yeah, I think that's very important.
Okay, let me tally up. Y'all that are paying attention, one of the things that are missing, I'm hearing, is the man, right? Is the man influence. My goodness, to have Abe on this call and have Brother Brandon on this call, these are Black educators, Black men who are educators. I mean, are we missing, and no knock to the women educators, but are we missing Black teachers that are men? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
how important is it to have, and let's just ask this question. Is it important, and how important, why is it important to have male teachers teaching our young Black men? Anybody?
I don't want to dominate the conversation, so I want to hear some of the other thoughts first, if there are any. Because I have a pretty strong opinion about this.
Brandon, you look like you finna say something. You on mute.
I was about to say you definitely good. I don't feel like you dominated for sure.
Okay.
I think without question is needed. I think it's two-parted in that question. I think more melanated teachers and staff in general is needed in education, because the average school, especially the schools with predominantly Black and brown schools, that is not what a lot of the staff is made up of in our communities. So I think in general that is needed, no matter what, more Black and brown staff. And then also just in education, you already know, it's a low number of male in any race, let alone when you step into the Black and brown race, it's even lower. So without question, I think we need more males, because boys need to see education from a standpoint, discipline, consistency, organization, a lot of the things that are missed, that you learn in school, that's not just science, math, history, or we need those things, but it's a lot of those things that they don't see. They don't consistently often see a male coming to something on time, coming somewhere dressed nice, dressed a certain way, communicating in certain things. It's a lot of things that I think a lot of our young man, I grew up the same way. I didn't grow up with my father in the home. So it was a lot of those things that were missed on a daily basis, that you didn't get from a male, or you didn't see a male in those positions. So you didn't even think it was possible. And also you didn't think the level of importance of education starts to take a hit when you don't see males inside of there, because you start to think that being smart is a girl thing. Being smart isn't cool. Being educated isn't the thing to do, because you don't see males in the school system consistently. So you start to and then oftentimes I think what happens with a lot of our boys, the only way that they can respond in the world is oftentimes when women talk to them or teach them. If it's not a woman, disciplining them, if it's not a woman educating them, then they don't know how to learn. So then when they get in the workforce and a supervisor, manager, or different things, a male speaks to them a certain way, they get defensive, or they want to fight, or they can't handle correction, because they grow up throughout the education system and they've never had a male discipline them.
I want to talk about the Black dads for a second. I think that our era, and I'm gonna make a generalization that everybody on this call we're all around the same age. I think our era of Black dads are running circles around the era that came before us.
Expound.
I have so many Black active male fathers of my students that don't get credit for their activities because of the myth that has been perpetuated that Black dads are deadbeats.
Wow.
I have Black dads at parent conferences. I have Black dads, I deal with on the phone, come up to the school, check up on their grades, come to the events, join in the PTO. I think that our era of fathers, us, because my dad never came to the school. You know what I'm saying? That was my mom's thing. Okay. I know Eddie ain't missed the parent-teacher conference. Not one. I ain't never missed one. Even before I was in education. You know what I'm saying? I get a lot of fathers that are active in these kids' lives. And I don't think they get a whole lot of credit for it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Could it be geographical and demographic in terms of class? You're in the south suburbs.
Yeah.
You ain't in the city. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. And I might agree with that if I didn't work in Dalton for 7 years. I might roll with that if I only been in Hazel Crest and that was my only experience. But when I was in Dalton, I had some dads that would show up we had this event called Real Men Read.
Yeah.
Where you know what I'm saying? The dads would come up and read. It'd be packed to the rafters with Black dads. We also had another mentoring program. I forget what it was called, but it was male only. We went out to the community for volunteers. Boys to Men is what it was called. Something along those lines. The Black dads showed up. This is in Dalton. The Black dads showed up and showed out and made sure we had everything we needed to adequately educate their kids, and especially their sons. I think that, being a practitioner, I get to see it firsthand. This generation's, our generation of fathers, me, you, Eddie, I think we're a whole lot better dads than our dads were to us. And then I want to talk about what Brandon brought up. There's something that we're working with now. It's called culturally responsive teaching. And basically what that means is this. In order for me to adequately take your lesson seriously, I have to see myself in your lesson. What do I mean by that? If I'm telling you a story about Cinderella and I'm a young Black female, Cinderella has to be a young Black female. Okay? Cinderella's got to be a young Black female. If I'm reading you a story about 7 dwarfs and I'm looking around my classroom and everybody in here is Black or brown, then dwarfs got to be Black or brown too. Okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find curriculum that has images of what our students look like. So our students can see themselves in these scenarios and once we get to that point where they can see themselves in their stories, then they can believe that they can accomplish what these people have accomplished. And let me tell you what spurred this. And I hope I don't offend anybody with this. And you put me on here, so I gotta go there. This comes from 3 years ago when the Illinois legislature mandated LBGQT curriculum in the school. Okay, now
pause. Let me be clear. What you're saying is the culturally sensitive styles of teaching,
culturally responsive.
Okay, that method was a byproduct of the initiative of the LGBTQ curriculum being brought into the schools.
Yes. Yes. And with the LGBTQ curriculum, it's not, if Brandon, I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet. It's not teaching your kids to be gay. Okay. It's not doing that. What it is doing, okay.
Teach today. I'm sorry.
What it is doing, I'll put it to you this way. I've been using Cinderella, okay? So culturally responsive teacher says you got to have a Black Cinderella. LBGQ Cinderella is being courted by a female. The prince is a female. And they just throw it into the store. They just throw it into the store.
Bro, go. You good, bro. You good. Go ahead.
They just throw it into the story. And so you know how we talk about how Garrett Morgan invented the stoplight. That's kind of culturally responsive, right? Because now a child can see what's possible by somebody that looks like them. Well, now they're telling you, and I don't know any true facts off the top of my head, so don't hold me to this, but we're going to use this as an example. This air purifier was invented by Lisa Harding, and Lisa Harding's wife is Michelle Harding. You see what I'm saying? Now they're trying to tell you what gay people have contributed to society. Then they try to teach tolerance through this. They give you a scenario where you're leaving the playground and a group of kids don't want to play with Stanley because he used to be Sheila. How do you go about befriending Sheila? How do you accept Sheila into your group? That's what it's teaching. It ain't saying, hey, go ahead and be gay. It's saying it's people out here that are gay that are making a contribution to society. So to counteract that, we had to come up with this. We had to come up with culturally responsive teaching to make sure our Black kings did not get lost in the shuffle.
Bravo. Bravo. That's huge. Because how quickly are other agendas passed? And in the process, we get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
Right. Our needs, the resources that are needed for us, all of that gets lost in making sure other agendas are at least, heard and pushed and implemented.
Yep. Now I ain't gonna lie. 3 years ago, when those books came in, I took them books and I put them in the janitor's closet. I did, because I wasn't ready to adequately, number one, supervise the teachers in the delivery of that instruction, because I don't think they were ready for it. And number two, I wasn't ready for the parent response. So what I had to do was I had to set up a couple of things first before I felt that it was a good time to roll that curriculum out. And I had support from district leadership. So before we roll this out, number one, we need to explain to the parents what this is. So I had a couple of family nights where I was explaining to them what the state is requiring us to teach. Here are some samples of the materials. And if you want to have a conversation with your children first, before they come home and start asking a bunch of questions, here's what we're putting into the curriculum. So now, if you as a parent want to control that narrative, I gave them the opportunity to do so. And then number two, I made sure that the teachers had pretty much that same training, but my training to them was a little bit different in terms of, it wasn't as much as controlling the narrative. It was technically, how do we fit this into the curriculum? Because we had to teach it. We didn't have any other choice. We had to teach it. So after that second year, I went ahead and I rolled it out.
Let me ask you this question as we shift gears.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that came up on Facebook, and I just want to address it, and we're gonna get out of here because we've been going for a minute. What can the church do, the church community do, to improve ourselves for this type of generation? Right? This whole notion of whiffums, right? This whole notion of, what's in it for me? As it relates to the church and how we reach a generation that one needs to know the Lord. Make no mistake about it, people in the church are mentors, they're supporters, they're helpers, they're educators, they're successful people. How do we make that connection? Understanding that the same kids that are in school, that are going to school, or that are traumatized and going to school, and these educators are able to grab them. What does the church do?
The same responsive curriculum that Brother Abraham was talking about needs to be translated in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Me and you and Brother Brandon know that there are the secrets of seminary that we don't teach. It's almost like we're a secret society, a cult almost, where we learn these truths and we contextualize scripture and we learn how to exegete and we learn all these words, but then we still run with our embedded theologies and or at the same stage that Brother Abraham was at when he put the books in the closet. But we stay there. We stay there and we stay in the janitor's closet, and but we never pull them out and actually dissect, because the Bible have been we have been we've been reading it like it's like it's Cinderella, but when in theory it's a very complex book, and you have to understand where they were, who they were as Hebrews, and what the languages that were being used, and what's going on culturally, and why are we using these words to condemn a certain group of people or certain sins, and why do we cherry pick, and all those things come from being heard and using these same kind of tactics that he's explaining, meeting people where they are and understanding them. That whole responsive curriculum for the LGBTQ community, that was meeting them where they were. That was making sure they were heard. But like you said, we don't want to get so lost in everybody else that we forget about it ourselves again. And so, but as far as regards to the church, we have to learn how to teach those things we've learned in such a way, and stop being so afraid of doing it and thinking that people are going to crucify us for teaching these things, because these are truths. These are, it's a fact about it.
Bro, Brandon?
Yeah, and I think spot on, and I think just like Brother Abraham was talking about showing curriculum in the schools that show the student inside those stories, is teaching our youth that they are inside of scripture and showing the truth about the historical context of the people who formulated the Bible, the people that were inside of the Bible, and showing them that they're in the Bible. Their people are in the Bible, showing them that it's relevant. It has been taught for years that book is just so long ago and way back then, and it happened years ago, and not bringing it into today's world and not teaching it into a concept and showing them how those things that happen aren't just fairy tales or just stories, how they're impacting our world today. Why our world is the way it is because of what is going on in scripture. Also teaching them who those people are, what those people look like, who those people were, that they are descendants of those people, and putting same way we do it in schools is putting our children into those scriptures and showing them that the Bible is them. They are involved in it. The Bible is playing out. It is not just a closed book. It did not just end in the end, and that is it. It is not done. That man chose those books that were put in there and into the concept of what they are, and that there was so much more, and there was so much more that could be in there, and that structure was put there. I think we have to do that. And the second part, I think, goes to what we talked about earlier when we're talking about the transition into manhood and some of those things that are missing. I think what unfortunately our world has done, and I think what the church has to step forward and do, we have not allowed we're missing the transition into manhood with our males, but we're also now missing more than ever with this generation them actually being children. Like our kids do so much adult things so early that, you know, we got fourth and fifth graders that will tell you about grown people stuff. You know what I mean? Grown people stuff, and participate in grown people stuff. And not that in our generation we didn't do some of those things. I'm not saying that, but they're so more advanced and so far ahead. I watch middle schoolers that spend so much time on Snapchat watching grown people. Like their whole life is now masked around grown people. Like everybody they want to be, everything that they do, every rapper, every artist, everything that they follow are full grown adults, and they watch their everyday life, and then it results in them not being children. So I think the church has to be two-part, show them in scripture, and also get to a place where we allow kids to go back to being kids and enjoying that lifestyle and being a child and being in that moment and teaching the importance of that. So then we can transition them into adulthood. Because what's missing from the need to transition them into adulthood is that they're never really in a place of when they weren't adult. Most of these kids, if you talk to the average 11-year-old, 12-year-old, they think they're grown and really think that. Not that all of us didn't say we was grown or one. I'm not saying that. They really for real think they're adults already. They think adults can't tell them nothing, can't nobody discipline them. They will cuss in front of adults. Or like, I'm not saying we didn't do none of that, but when adults walked in a room, I'm not finna cuss when adults is in a room. You know what I mean? That's not a kid's place. I'm not there trying to say we wasn't doing wrong or none of that. And I'm not saying it was right that we was hiding our wrongs. I'm not trying to say that. But at the same time, kids had a place and had an understanding of the kid. And in our age, we just didn't get transitioned into adulthood. And I think the reverse is happening. They're not getting transitioned into adulthood. And a lot of that is because they're starting adulthood in 6th, 7th grade, and it's not being addressed. So I think the church has to do it in a twofold manner.
Wow. Edmund, you got the last word, bro.
Well, I agree with everything that was said. This conversation just happened organically, how we touched upon the points that, you know, that we should have. One thing that I can say that the church would need to do, I feel like the church needs to have a partnership, like Brother Abraham said, the staff has a partnership with the children in their education. We need to have a partnership in their walk of faith. And as we have a partnership with them, we can see them matriculate and grow with their faith. And I also think that there does need to be a rites of passage for that man that the church can support, because and that we can go behind, because they need to know that, you know, the steps they're taking and the steps that they're taking, they're not going to be easy. They're going to be trials and tribulations, but stick to the plan. You don't have to do what other kids are doing. You don't have to participate in what other kids are doing. That's not for you. There's a plan, there's a purpose for you, and you have to live in it. And words like that can encourage them, because this is a partnership. When they come to Christ, they expand us and we grow with them. So that's all I have to say. And I thank you guys for showing up today and tonight. I know we started a little bit late, but we went over all the topics that we should have. And I appreciate you, Brother Abraham, Brandon, Alan, Pastor, always.
Thank you, y'all. Thanks again. I'm going to say this and I'm done. I know Edmund had the last word. I'm going to just say this. The church cannot believe that they can do it all. The church has to learn the value of collaboration. I'm not trying to extend the whole conversation, but let me just say this to capstone what we've done, is that here is a prime example. All of you, some of you are pastors, but all of us have different specialties in different areas of life. You know what I'm saying? Abe ain't a pastor, but he's the pastor of his district. Huh? He run that. But what I'm saying is, the reality is the church has to collaborate. The beauty of this pandemic is that the church got back to where the church should have been, in the streets. And so in the streets are all those stakeholders, all those community partners, all those people that can assist the church in doing the necessity. The church can't do everything, but the church can expand its tentacles in specific communities and specific nonprofits with specific professionals and specialties that help aid the common goal, which is what? Get these kids off the street, give these kids a sense of purpose, help these kids to know that they have a listening ear, help them to hone their skills and be whoever God has called them to be. The church has to be able to reach out and collaborate. And don't make no mistake about it, you don't have to always collaborate and agree with who you collaborate with in totality. Maybe there's some things you just don't line up with, some principles you may not line up with in totality, but there's some commonalities that you can use and work together for the common good. So collaboration is key. Thank you so much for joining. And Minister Edmond, close us out in prayer and we're gone.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you with bowed heads and humble hearts. We thank you for this time to reflect on our young men that are going through a lot right now, Father God. And we may not have all the answers, but we thank you for getting us together to just come together and start working with these young children and supporting these children in our church, supporting these children at their schools, and supporting these children in their community. We ask you to bless our efforts, keep us and strengthen us. These and other blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name, and for his sake do we ask it. Amen.